Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Namo sadanto suchedoye alahari samyao sanputo xie. 无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even through billions of eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Namo 大方广佛华严经，华严海会佛菩萨。Namo 大方广佛华严经，华严海会佛菩萨。Homage to the Buddha's Flower Garland Sutra of Great Expanded Teachings and the ocean-wide Flower Garland Assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. I'd like to begin today's lecture by acknowledging country and to say that the Kombumerri people of the Ugambe language group and region practice spiritual connections to land and to living beings and to all creation here in this location for tens of thousands of years. Today we acknowledge them as traditional custodians of this land. We acknowledge them with gratitude, with sorrow, and with hope that we can move to a place of justice and partnership together. We acknowledge their wisdom and their elders, past, present, and emerging, and acknowledge all First Nations peoples whose sovereignty was never ceded. Good evening, everyone. My name is Heng Sure. I'm here in Gold Coast of Australia along with Dharma Master Jin Yong. We are here at the Gold Coast Dharma Realm, and we are about to conclude this program that was sponsored by Dharma Realm Buddhist University and hosted by Dr. Raymond Ye and Professor John Vu. We also would like to acknowledge as well the work of the translators in making this lecture possible tonight. So let me say first of all that 如果大家要听中文的话，我们有义工发心把我所讲的英语帮你们大家翻译流利的普通话。那个控制板的右下角有一个小地球，是不是？那里 interpretation， 你就 click 在那个地方，你就可以找到 Chinese. Also, I wanted to say that we are proud to have a Vietnamese translation as well. If you look in your chat box, you can find the link to the Vietnamese translation, and you can hear the words that I'm saying in Vietnamese, and you can invite your elders or your friends who are still learning their English to come and listen to our ideas. All right, so with that in mind, those are our protocols to get going. Let me share my screen and show you what we've been up to. There we are. I've got a nice big cursor here to share with you, so. All right. We'll make it bigger. That's too big. We'll make it smaller. Here was our program. It's called Ancient Wisdom in Modern Life. And the idea was that we wanted to share how the wisdom of Buddhism could relate to and be used to solve complex problems in every area of modern life. Problems that now threaten the sustainability of humanity and the other species here on planet Earth. Buddhism teaches that everything comes from the mind, and it becomes essential to develop an awareness of how we create the world outside and the world inside. If we could do that, our world would improve overnight. By understanding our minds in depth, we can bring growth and healing to ourselves and others. That's how we started this forum. So we want to apply Buddhist wisdom in daily lives, especially in crucial situations, using it to understand the causes and conditions that allow humanity to create wars, for example, and that allow us to to survive a global pandemic, the pain and the suffering that comes from simply being alive in a human body. And we want to put an end to that suffering. That was the Buddha's project from the start. So this is the awareness that we wanted to generate. And we hope that our forum has been the first step on a long journey of merging Buddhist wisdom and other disciplines to create new solutions to the evolving problems that we're facing today. Professor Wu introduced me back on October 2nd. We heard from Dr. Vives Lopez in conversation with Bhikshuni Heng Yin, and Professor Ye was the moderator of that program. Then we heard a fascinating report from Taiwan, from Bhikshunis who are doing palliative care for elders. Dharma Master Dojia was in conversation with Nancy Zhu. That was on the 16th. And then Professor Wu gave his thesis on Is There Life After Death? A learned discourse of one of the essential questions of human life is, why does it end? And is there any alternative to mortality? And Dr. Ye was the moderator of that program. Then last week, Professor Chen Yu brought us into a conversation about AI, artificial intelligence, and awareness intelligence. Fascinating talk. And Professor Wu was her moderator. So I'm now concluding the series, and here's where I wanted to go. Let's see, I've got a comment here. Let's see. Okay, there we go. So let me bring up my material that I'd like to share with folks. And so the theme of the talk was, the theme of the program, the forum, was that when we apply Buddhist wisdom, ancient wisdom, that it can have a beneficial effect on modern problems. There's a problem introduced with that thesis, which is, do we understand the Buddha's wisdom? That's a question. And often, what happens when ancient systems, whether it's Buddhism, whether it's Christianity, whether it's Islam, whether it's Hinduism, Brahmanism, or the other, even when it's science, the problem is that the original ideas travel around the globe and they get bound up in culture. So Buddhism in Japan is a different story than Buddhism in Sri Lanka. Buddhism in Tibet has a lot of Tibetan styles and customs, as well as language and food and gender issues and authority structures that is very different from Buddhism in Thailand. Now, Buddhism has come to the West. Here we are. I'm an American Buddhist monk. Heng Sure is a Taiwanese monk educated in America for decades. And as I look at our audience tonight, we have with us 140, almost 140 people. Half of them are listening in Chinese language, and another third are listening in Vietnamese. So now we have a global audience. Buddhism has been around for 2,500 years. When we say ancient wisdom is going to interact with modern problems to produce solutions, what kind of Buddhism are we talking about? Do we understand it? Do we understand the Dharma? If we understand it, are we able to apply it? Are we able to, maybe let's say I'm a devoted precept-holding Buddhist who has a practice, and I go to my science lab, I go to my engineering pod, I go to my government committee, and I want them to appreciate my understanding of the Dharma because it's so clear to me what a benefit it would be, and yet they think I'm talking some sort of ancient language from a museum or from a library. They don't connect with the wisdom that I see. because we haven't decoded the Dharma. We haven't taken the Dharma out of the cultural skin, the cultural wrapper that we learned it in. So, what did Master Xuanhua, Shang Xuan Xiahua La He Shang, what did Shifu do in the face of that? How did he face that issue, especially being someone who was still learning his English? Although he understood everything we were saying, his ability to speak English had its limits. What did Shifu do? Shifu said, when we bring the Dharma to this country, and he meant that about North America, but we could say to the 21st century, he said, we're going to change its name. We're not going to call it Buddhism, because as soon as you call it Buddhism, you have people who say, oh, I'm not that. I can't accept that. I already have my religion, thank you very much. I don't need a new one. Buddha? What is Buddha? That's not English. So Shifu said, we're going to change the name. We're going to call it Ren Jiao, the teaching of humanity, he said. We're going to call it Zhong Sheng Jiao, the teaching of living beings. We're going to call it Xin Jiao, the teaching of the mind. We're going to call it 最深的心理学, the most profound depth psychology. And when Shifu said this early on, back in the 70s, and we heard that, and I think many of us went, yeah, Shifu, that's clever. But as I look at it now, I see the wisdom in Shifu's renaming Buddhism, and I'm convinced that he was not in jest. Shifu, that was not just a facile kind of easy translation to make the Westerners happy. I think Shifu meant that we don't, if we're going to bring the Dharma into conversation with the intellectual and the practical disciplines in the world to solve the world's problems, and I deeply understand that that was Shifu's goal. He was not interested entirely in making new Buddhists. He wanted to save the world. Shifu wanted to take the Dharma and apply it to problems of population, to problems of family and society, problems in education. He wanted to make peace among religions, starting with the split in Buddhism. This was, Shifu's vision was vast. He wanted to make the Dharma, it's called, what did he call it? 道德救国, he said. Virtue can save the world. When we understand 道德, virtue in the way, or the virtue of the Tao, the virtues embodied in the Tao and brought to life by cultivators, 修道的人, cultivators of the way, we can save the world, he said. Now, that's a big goal. And Shifu wasn't, he wasn't one who spoke lightly. He meant it. So, if you're going to use virtue to save the world, but you only bring it in Chinese language, there's a problem. People who don't speak Chinese won't get it. They'll think that's foreign. You know, that's not us. So what do you do if you really mean you're going to use the ancient wisdom to solve contemporary problems? Then you need to find the heart of the Dharma, the essence of it. You need to find the core that can be planted in new soil, in a new continent. When you water it, up comes a plant that looks familiar, that looks approachable, that looks like something you need and want. So, 心教, the teaching of the mind. 智慧教, I left that out in my list. 智慧教, the teaching of wisdom. What do you object to in the teaching of wisdom? Nothing? I like that. Yeah, me too. Let's get to work being wiser with this teaching. 众生教, the teaching of all beings. It fits everyone. Men, women, Eastern, Western, ancient, modern. it fits, it works. 最深的心理学, understanding of the depths of the human mind. Oh, maybe that's what Shifu had in mind, to take away, to quickly pare away, slice off, dip it in water so you can melt away, you can dissolve the things that separate us from the Buddha's wisdom that are not part of his original teaching. Right? So that was, I think, the first step. And when I say we have a problem with our title, Ancient Wisdom for Modern Problems, do we understand that ancient wisdom? Have we presented it in a way that people understand it and can grasp it and want it and say, "Oh, I need that. Let me grab that. Thank you for sharing it." Right? That would be the obvious. That's what would be a teaching that people could use to save the world. If they say, "Oh, that's I don't want those golden images up there in the altar. I don't dare bow to those because I might get zapped by an angry, jealous God." There's a problem right there. So if the Buddha is only these images, right? We know, oh, that's Dizampusa, oh, that's Pilu Janapho. Yeah, but if my teaching that I was raised in says that by bowing to graven idols, I'm going to forfeit my immortal soul, so you see the problems right away. All right, how did Shifu solve it? What did he do? So what I want to share today is what I think might be an under layer, a deeper layer of application of our approach, the things we've learned week by week from all of our speakers in this series that I think might be helpful to decode the Dharma and to follow Shifu's instructions to change the name of the Dharma. Okay. Master Hua also did something that I think people aren't aware of, how he actually, once city of 10,000 Buddhas was well established in Mendocino counties, that's to say after 1976, Master Hua would come up from San Francisco in an old station wagon that people would drive him up. And he would arrive early in the morning, and we would go, when we heard that Shifu was here, usually a Saturday morning or a Friday morning sometimes, we would all go over to what is called the Wordless Hall, Wuyantang. And the Wordless Hall was set up with a blackboard. Sometimes it would be the Miao Yu Tang, the Wonderful Words Hall, but mostly it was the Wuyantang, the Wordless Hall. And Shifu would be there at 6 a.m. We'd done our Zao, we'd done our meditation, got a cup of tea, and we'd come over at 6 a.m. early. And there was Shifu, and what was he going to explain standing at the blackboard? He would explain the Lunyu, the Buddhist Analects. And people say, "I don't believe you." Watch. Lunyu Bai Hua Xin Jie, right? Lunyu Bai Hua Jie Xuan. This is the, we haven't translated it in English yet, but this is a 3-volume set of Master Hua's lectures on the Confucian Analects. My point is to say that Master Hua said, I want to make living Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, patriarchs and matriarchs out of human flesh and blood, not just wood and metal and lacquer and clay. He said, I want to make living Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. But these Westerners, a lot of them, they don't understand how to be people yet. 我们学佛做人，人道尽，佛道成. We learn from the Buddha, but we make progress in becoming human. 学佛做人. We learn from the Buddha, but we apply that in our humanity. When we can become the best possible people, we become Buddhas. Buddhas are perfected humans. Humanity is the raw material for Buddhas. So what do we study? If we want to really cultivate, we have to understand how to be better people. He said, look at these Westerners, they don't understand the word filiality, 孝道, 孝顺. It's not part of the vocabulary. If you, in your phone, take your phone and you type in F-I-L-I-A-L-I-T-Y, you will get auto-corrected to finality. Filiality is not even in the vocabulary of your phone. You have to kind of program it in there. So yeah, our job, Shifu taught us as much about how to be better people as he taught us about becoming Buddhas. If I am still broken from my own human roots, how can I possibly understand great compassion? 办不到, right? How much the less can I understand emptiness? So both prajna and karuna, both 大智慧 and 大慈悲 will be just some destination in the misty future, but it won't be my reality because I haven't learned my ABCs of being a human. So, 道德救国, not only can 道德救国, can virtue save the country, but 道德成佛,佛是万德备. The Buddha is someone who is replete with all of the possible virtues of his human nature, his Buddha nature, that have now been uncovered through cultivation of the way. So, here's my suggestion. I'm going to suggest if we said we wanted to communicate the teachings of the Dharma to the world that needs them, what would we pick from all of the 84,400 法门, 84,000 methods, Dharma methods? What would we pick as the essential place to work, as the essence that you couldn't reduce it any further, no further reducible, and you would have the heart of the Dharma that you could take like a seed and transplant into the soil of the new world? What would you have? What would it be? And my answer is probably the one that I would pick would be called the 心地法门, the mind ground Dharma method. 心地法门. This is a teaching that we find in the Sixth Patriarch, 六祖慧能大师. We find it in the Sixth Patriarch Sutra. We find Master Empty Cloud, Xu Yin Lao Heshang, talking about the 心地法门. We also find it in the Fan Wang Jing, the Net of Brahma Sutra with the Bodhisattva precepts. And we find Shifu, Master Xuanhua, talking about it constantly. What is it? The idea of the 心地法门, it's an analogy. It says that our minds are like a garden. And the thing about the mind as a garden is that it will happily grow any seed that we plant there. And what are the seeds? The seeds are the words I speak, the thoughts in my mind, and the actions I do. 3 modes of karma, every word, every deed, every thought, plants in the ground of the mind a seed. And those seeds grow absolutely impartially. They all grow. So how is my life going to turn out? Depends entirely on what kind of seeds I planted in my mind. How is the world going to turn out? It depends entirely on the kind of seeds we plant in the collective part of our minds, everyone doing it together. So, to make a better world, we have to become good, skillful gardeners of the mind. Now, what do we use what tools do we use to become good gardeners of the mind? And the answer is, of course, the Buddha's precepts. The 5 precepts are the ones accessible to all Buddhist disciples, left home and at home. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at those precepts. I've got a story. When I was bowing, I did a pilgrimage at one point in my formation as a monk. And I was traveling along the Pacific Coast Highway, which is the highway number 1 on the coast of California. And that Pacific Coast Highway is right on the beach. There's the highway, north and south. There's the sand, the beach. There's the Pacific Ocean. So there are hundreds of miles of Highway 1, the PCH they call it, Pacific Coast Highway, where the spray from the waves hitting the beach can sometimes be right. They can be right beside you. You know, you're bowing on the edge of the water. So certain things grow in that environment because it's salty. It's got to be something tough, ground cover, and you know what kinds of grass grows on the beach, at the edge of the beach. Well, there is something wild that survives and actually thrives, and that's blackberry vines, mulberry vines, pantang, blackberry, mulberry, raspberry. They grow on these very sharp, hard vines that they sprawl in all directions. And if they get no control, they become what's called a bramble. A bramble is a bush of vines, each with thorns and these spiky thorns. You try to walk through it, you can't. It grabs your legs. You're stuck on the vines. Rabbits can run underneath it. Their fur is soft and they go in between, and birds can fly through it, but otherwise it's impenetrable. You can't move through it. And yet these bushes you can't kill them. They're so tough that they can thrive in the saltwater spray alongside the highway. So there is fruit. The berries come out of these vines, but because the brambles grow so thick that the sun doesn't really get through, and the berries are kind of bitter and sour and small, not much you can eat. But I remember one day bowing along the highway right there, and we came past a home, somebody, a tough old character who was living on the edge of the edge of the beach, and he was a gardener, and he had taken the wild berry bramble that grew naturally wild right there beside, and what he had done is he had taken pruning shears, right, the things that you trim branches with, and he had pruned back 2/3 of the bramble and just trimmed 3. If there were 3 branches, he trimmed 2 of them away and left one bramble, right? One berry vine, no bramble. The bramble was cut by 2/3, and he had trained it up over a trellis, over a wooden lattice that the berries would climb on. And because he allowed the sun to reach through and touch the berry vine, and because he had reduced the number of berries, on his vines there was big, ripe, sweet fruit, berries. And you know that he took those berries, and he or she took the berries and turned them into jam that they put on their peanut butter sandwich, turned them into blueberry muffins and blackberry pancakes, and had something that made people's breakfasts just delightful. You can put them in jars and eat them during the winter when there are no berries. So when I saw this, I thought, boy, that's a skillful gardener. He took the bramble, the same raw material, and because he disciplined it, he pruned away the excess and he gave it shape and form. So up over the trellis came the berry vine, and all this delicious fruit came out. And I thought, the Buddha's precepts. Look at that. How does that work? So the Buddha's precepts, they say avoiding killing, maximizing everyone's opportunity to live together, avoiding stealing, letting everyone use the material that supports their lives without taking it away from them. Avoiding sexual misconduct, which means honoring the vows that we make in our relationships with each other, not going wrong with selfish sexual desire. Instead, using that energy to enhance your life and protect others. Avoiding dishonesty, and instead honoring integrity in words and thoughts. And honoring wisdom and avoiding intoxication. So you'll notice I didn't, usually how do the 5 precepts go? No killing, no stealing, no sexual misconduct, no lies, no. So too many no's. When I was a young man and I heard the 5 precepts, what I heard was the no. And the no meant no fun. And it meant I have to obey you. You're an authority over me. You're going to keep me from doing what I want. That was how I heard it. Of course, being a rebellious teenager, this sounded like nothing I wanted at all. But I didn't understand the way the Buddha presented the precepts. The Buddha said, if you want to follow me and wake up, you can. You can. There is a path, there is a way. And I did it. I succeeded in my search for wisdom by avoiding pitfalls. These are the things that if you avoid them, you not only will not fall into these pits, but your own virtue will come forward and shine, right? The virtues of your nature will be evident, radiant, gleaming. You will wake up. Your wisdom and your compassion can be there if you include samadhi in your meditation. So the Buddha gave us these precepts completely practically. They were entirely pragmatic. They were for use. These are precepts not because he's happy when you have no fun. That's not the point why the Buddha, my disciples can never have fun. You can't kill or steal or lust or lie or drug. Totally not. That's a very immature way to approach the Buddha's precepts. Somehow he wants to keep us indoors and sober all the time. It's not that. It's that if I want to wake up, follow the Buddha, and maximize Dao De, virtue in the way, then avoiding killing, cherishing life, avoiding stealing, cherishing material, ownership, sufficiency. Not only that, cherishing relationships, cherishing the promises that we make with each other, cherishing integrity, cherishing wisdom and sobriety, clarity. That in mind, you know what happens? When you meditate, very quickly, your mind finds the center and you don't go wrong. No obstacles. I'm going to sneeze here, excuse me. Here we go. Luckily, I can mute myself so I don't sneeze into the microphone. So that's a very different approach to morality. It's not that the Buddha wants to be a morality police. He's saying meditation works better when you can hold those precepts. Okay, so with the image of the gardener who was able to produce sweet fruit from what was a bramble, which was just awful. There was a no-fly zone, a no-walk zone, where those thorns were just in all directions. Instead, by using the pruning shears and pruning away the parts of the bramble that we didn't need, he was able to bring forth delicious fruit. When we use the precepts to prune away the parts of our lives where we go wrong with greed and anger and delusion and pride and jealousy and doubt, then what happens? The fruit of humanity comes forth. And it's useful to others, it's sweet, that is to say wisdom and compassion, and it's helpful. We can actually serve the world that way. So that the idea of a wisdom garden, following the precepts, it makes tremendous sense. This is how the Buddha gave us the first step into the Dharma. After generosity is precepts. Now, so what did Master Hua say? So Shifu, being totally, completely tuned in to Western society, to how we lived in the 20th century in America, Master Hua said, I'm going to give you something that will help you on the mind ground hold the precepts. And he said they're called the Liu Da Zongzhi, the 6 guidelines. And I have to tell you, at the start, there were 5. It was the Wu Da Zongzhi. Then Shifu met a disciple. I won't bring his name up, but those of you who know. He was, the person was an actor. He was a media personality, we used to call him. And he was also a writer. And he became famous by stretching the truth, by presenting himself as somebody he wasn't. He had many, many faces, many personas. And he also wanted to cultivate the way. And so Shifu said, you will not cultivate the way until you stop lying. He said, you will not succeed in cultivating. So the 6th guideline, 不打妄语, came out. All right, so there were 5. To correspond to what? The 5 precepts on the mind ground. Does that make sense? Is that Buddhist code language? So if still, interestingly enough, if you go to the 10 Commandments found in the Hebrew Scriptures, found in the Torah, you find thou shalt nots for 4 out of 5 of the Buddha's precepts. Killing, stealing, coveting someone's spouse, and dishonesty, lying, bearing false witness. Just the same. So the ancient Hebrews agreed that the best definition of a human was someone who did not kill, steal, lust, or lie. Intoxicants were not included in that list. When you go to the Holy Quran, you find the same. You find the same 4, but they include intoxication. When you go to the yoga aphorisms of Patanjali in Hinduism, you find the same teachings, that a wise human will avoid those mistakes. So here we have Judaism and Christianity based on the 10 Commandments. We have Islam and we have Hinduism. That's most of the world's religions, major religions, that is to say, agreeing on a fundamental definition of what it means to be a human. So here is the Dharma from the point of view of Ren Jiao, the teaching of humanity. We don't have to use the name Buddha. We can just say better people live this way. Master Hua, Shifu Shangren, took it one step deeper. He said, we understand ourselves in terms of psychology these days. Pretty much since Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud and many of the other early founders of this branch of medicine called psychiatry, and all of the allied methodologies that grew up around it in psychology. So psychiatry and psychology, this understanding of people being, we are moved by the thoughts in our mind. This is the main thrust of humanity in the 20th and 21st century. The century of the self pays so much attention to problems in the mind, right? So neurosis and psychosis and paranoia and schizophrenia and hang-ups and just mental illness. I was listening on a podcast the other day, and they were advertising online therapy, and they were saying everybody needs therapy. Just everybody needs a psychiatrist. Everybody needs a therapist. How widespread has been this understanding of people as being motivated by thoughts in the mind. Master Hua tuned into this, and he said, let's take a look at those 5 precepts on the mind ground, he said. And he gave us the 6 guidelines. He said, these 6 guidelines are the best, most important method for cultivation that I have found in my 50 years of cultivation, said Shifu. He said, if you understand how to use these, you will go to Buddhahood. That's how important they are. That's how fundamental. So, okay, I'm going to pause right here and say, our forum is talking about ancient wisdom and how it can contribute to solving modern problems. And if we're going to communicate ancient wisdom to people in a way that they will say, oh, that's interesting, I might pick that up. Thank you for that. Instead of saying, oh, Buddhism, yeah, thanks, no, I go to church, I'm not, no. Instead of rejecting it, thinking it's foreign or somehow bound up in some cultural wrapper that is not them, here's the key, right here. Now, at this point, I'm going to share my screen so you don't have to look at my face anymore. There we go. Put that away for now. This is the Buddha's son Rahula in the rain. That's one of the 18 arhats from here at the Gold Coast Dharma realm. Isn't that handsome? Yeah. Rahula in the rain. Okay, take a look. We've got right here, not that one, but this one. Coming up. There we are. Okay. What is the relationship between the 5 precepts and the 6 guidelines? Here's the idea. It's that, and for the translators, I'm working on what's on the box here. Broken precepts are preceded by misguided thoughts that we didn't catch. If we can catch the thoughts using the 6 guidelines and change them on the mind ground, in other words, prune them away, just like the farmer with the berry vines, the gardener with the berry vines, change them with antidotes to the wrong thoughts, then the precepts are held effortlessly on the ground of the mind. Is this big? Can you all see these here? Let me show you. I want to show you right here. What are the 6 guidelines? Look, can you see my red cursor here? I'm looking at this second line here. The 6 guidelines says, look at fighting. Zheng Xin. Zheng Xin is Zheng Xin comes before the act of killing. Look at the upper line. Killing comes from thoughts of fighting. If you have no thoughts of fighting, you will not get into an act of killing unless it's accidental. Every act of killing begins with a thought of, that person is different from me, separate from me, is not me, is inhuman, I can kill them, it's all right. If you don't have those thoughts of fighting, you will never get into an action of killing. What is the second guideline? See my cursor here? Greed. Shifu said greed can lead to, if you don't catch it, acts of stealing. Every act of stealing is preceded by a thought of greed. I want that. I want more. That's mine. I'm going to take it. Right? No thoughts of greed, a thought instead of, oh, I actually could give. Then there's no stealing. Acts of sexual misconduct, see my cursor, my red line here, are preceded by thoughts of seeking. I am not content with what I have. I need something new, something different. So you break your marriage vows. You transgress on somebody's person because of selfish sexual desire, right? Okay, that's number 3. Selfishness arises first before acts of lying. Think, oh, I'm going to pretend that I'm something I'm not. I'm going to exaggerate. I'm going to make you think I'm special, so I'm going to lie and tell you I didn't do it, or I did do it, or I'm somebody I'm not. If we can catch the selfish thoughts, we don't tell lies. Finally, Shifu said, personal advantage, 自利, thoughts of wanting to get higher, wanting to break out of my current state, which is kind of ordinary and everything. So what do? We drink, we abuse substances, etc. Okay, and then lying is just that act. Okay, let's look down below. If I have enough skill to watch my mind and see a thought of fighting arise, what do I do when I think, oh, that person cut me off in traffic, I'll show them? What do? We substitute a thought of yielding and harmony, 让而不争, right? If we see greed rise in the mind, and it rises slowly. Greed is not like anger. Greed is slow. Greed is like, I could sure use a new car. He's got a really pretty new car. Maybe I could take it out for a spin. You say, no, I want to instead offer them a ride in my car. Charity, generosity, giving crosses over thoughts of greed. You never steal, right? Follow? So I see a seeking thought, 7-year itch. Oh, that same old face over the breakfast table all these years. I need a change, right? So you think, and what happened the last time I let that voice in? She didn't talk to me for a month, or he didn't talk to me for a month. Instead, we say, 知足常乐能忍自安. When you can be content, you'll always be happy. You say, that person across the breakfast table puts up with me. They let me, all my bad habits, all of my obnoxiousness, they put up with me. They don't throw me out. I should be grateful. I should be content. I should celebrate them. They are a bodhisattva here in my kitchen, here to cross me over. That thought of contentment and gratitude, you don't break your relationships. When you have a selfish thought, you transform the thought of selfishness with community thoughts, interdependent thoughts, losing yourself, and you never lie. When you say, I want the good stuff for myself, personal advantage, I want all the benefits, you say, that never made me happy. Service makes me happy. Helping others, being a steward, taking responsibility is what always makes me happy. So with that thought of service, you don't abuse intoxicants. Finally, when a thought to lie, you just remember, once you tell one lie, you've got to cover that lie with another lie, and then you have to be careful to make sure everybody hears the cover. So much work, so much trouble, and then it always comes out in the end. So honesty, thoughts of honesty cross over thoughts of self-benefit and dishonesty, and you never tell lies. So see how these work. This is the relationship between Buddhist precepts, actions to avoid, and where they come from, which is these 6 thoughts and how to cross those thoughts over. If you can catch them, you hold the precepts effortlessly on the ground of the mind. What do you think? Does that work? Does that make sense for you? Okay, well that's one. This would be a good time to bring out the banjo and sing a song, but I didn't bring my banjo, so. Oh, okay. All right, some people online are agreeing. Absolutely correct. All right, now I've got, so this, let's step back. I think that's why Master Hua gave us those 6 guidelines to allow us to take the first step into real, genuine cultivation, which is the precepts, but to do it in a way that 20th and 21st century people understand ourselves, which is psychologically. We really do think, oh, I got the blues, you know, I'm in a bad mood, or depressed. Just ever since COVID, I just can't shake it. You know, I'm indoors. Maybe people are locked down today as they're listening. We have 170 friends online. Let me take a look. Down at the bottom is where yeah. Okay, lots of friends. Maybe you are. Maybe you're in a lockdown right now. So how do you survive those feelings that just kind of take us over, feelings of despair, thinking that climate's broken, we broke it, there's no hope, that the seas are going to rise, the fish are dying, the species are going extinct, right? And tornadoes and floods and fires. So they call it ecological despair, right? People who think that, but just for example, what are we going to do with our children who are born these years and their children? What kind of a planet are we handing over to them? Native Americans had a beautiful saying. He said, when it comes to the big decisions, always ask yourself, will this still work 7 generations in the future? If so, go ahead. In other words, the idea was that we are responsible. We're creating the world for our children and grandchildren. So if we look at that and think, wow, we're doing such a bad job, our generation, we will be cursed at by our children when they finally realize how selfish we were. Okay, what do you do in a situation like that? Do you just go deeper? Do you just spend all day watching TV and drinking beer? What do you do? Well, Master Hua would say, we do understand ourselves on the realm of the mind, and yet what a Buddhist can do is to get to work, watching the thoughts rise and fall, and being a skillful gardener, and using the plow, using the pruning shears of the 6 guidelines, we choose between thoughts. Now, this is another really important point to make, and this is as a freedom-loving ex-hippie, whose standard was, don't fence me in. The thing that I finally understood about the precepts after resisting them for years was that holding the precepts is completely voluntary. At no point does the Buddha punish us. The Buddha is not a cop. So how did I hit upon that? I have a story, and then I've got a story and one more chart, and then we're done. So the story goes, I was in Calgary at Avatamsaka Monastery on staff there, and Calgary was pretty far away from San Francisco, and it was easy to get the feeling that somehow you were kind of sent out to the frontier regions. And even so, the phone would ring every other week or so. 国长啊, 怎么样啊? Shifu would say, and Shifu would call, and oh my goodness, just the sun would rise, and here your teacher's paying attention to you. And then Shifu would come visit a couple times a year. And those weekends were precious times. But it would be a mistake to think it was all pleasant and fun and kind of puppies and balloons when Shifu was there. It wasn't. When Shifu was there and on your case, you often felt like you were getting cleaned by a pressure washer, a power washer. So that was the case just before Shifu was going to the airport to fly back to San Francisco one day. I was being taught, and sometimes Shifu would test your patience to see if whether you'd learn, how much patience you'd learn. He would scold you for things that you hadn't done. So it was not my job to bring in the mail, but I was bowing goodbye to Shifu, and he said, he was scolding me, and he was saying, how come you lost the letters today? You know, where was the mail? The mail was late. And I was like, I knew that if I said, you know, 师父我没有啊，不是，不要怪我. It wasn't my job. If I said that, he would, oh, okay, no problem, no problem. As soon as you complain, it's like, oh, okay, you don't understand the teaching. But I didn't. I was just, I don't know, Shifu, somehow I just didn't pay attention, Shifu. And I looked up. I was kneeling, and I looked up, and Shifu had a smile on his face. And he said, how many years have you been a Buddhist? 你学佛多少年了？师父，我73年皈依师父。He said, oh, how many years have you been a monk? I said, 10年，师父。10 years as a monk. 3 steps, 1 bow was already behind me. And he said, 10 years, you know, I don't think you've taken the first step inside the Buddha's door. He said, 我总觉得你第一步你还没有踏到佛门里边来了. He said, 师父, you know, you've been a monk for 10 years, you're not a Buddhist, not even the first step. And he said, I think you still assume that the Buddha is like a cop who is going to beat you on the head if he catches you breaking the precepts and punish you. Isn't that right? 你是不是觉得佛陀就像当一个警察一样，如果他看到你犯戒，他都会打你，罚你，是不是? He said, and somehow the quality of a really, really good teacher is that he knows exactly when to push you past your comfortable limits. If it's the wrong time, you'll resent him. If it's too late, it just won't have any effect. But when at the time, and Shifu was just the master at knowing exactly when to push his disciples past their limits to a new awakening. And as Shifu said, you still think the Buddha is a cop. An image came to my mind, and I had an Old Testament God sitting on a throne with a long white beard, but the Buddha's face. And he was an angry God, and he was there to punish, but he had the Buddha's face. And I realized that as a former Christian, a Protestant Methodist, I had not come across to a deeper understanding of who the Buddha was. I still had a hybrid authority figure. I had an Old Testament God, angry, and the Buddha's face. Shifu said, you still don't understand how compassionate the Buddha really is. He's just waiting for you to wake up. He said, 你还不了解佛陀是怎么这么慈悲，他就是等你开悟了. He said, and then Shifu stood up and packed his bag and went to the airport. And I was, my jaw was off, because it was too true that my adolescent American false understanding of freedom meant that don't fence me in, don't give me any rules, because I'll break them. And I also had the feeling that if the Buddha didn't see me break the rules, I got away with it. I didn't understand the precepts on the mind ground. And the idea is that, this was my original point before I told the story, that precepts are voluntary. Picking up the Dharma is completely up to us. The Buddha is not a cop who will reward us if he likes us and we get saved through grace, or he'll punish us if he doesn't like us, if we make him angry and he sends us to hell or punishes us. That's just not part of the teaching at all. Shakyamuni Buddha, when he was the prince, had to work and work and work to find the mind ground. He was out doing all kinds of weird yogas, thinking that this was going to get him to awakening, hanging upside down from a tree limb by his knees, sleeping on a bed of nails, walking over on a bed of coals, flaming coals. And none of them worked, right? Starving himself to end desire, that didn't work either. So, and indulging ourselves in pleasure really doesn't work. That just dulls us and helps us break precepts. So finally, Shakyamuni Buddha, as the prince, before he was the Buddha, said, I'm going to watch my mind. I'm going to tend the mind ground garden and sit right here and let everything settle. And sure enough, 夜度明星而无道. He saw a bright star. We have a lunar eclipse coming up tomorrow. Did you all know? I guess on Wednesday here in Australia, Tuesday. There's a big full moon eclipse happening in Taurus coming up. So, 夜度明星而无道. The Buddha woke up. So, okay, he did it on his own. We do it on our own. It's up to us. Nobody, and the other thing is, when you're holding the precepts on the mind ground, using those 6 guidelines, nobody knows. You can't show off as being a big cultivator. 有没有那个功夫呢？没人知道. Nobody knows if you are, successful at holding the precepts. You know, and the Buddha knows. The Bodhisattvas know. And the living beings of your own nature know. So that's another aspect of it. These 6 guidelines. Are you a good gardener of the mind ground with your pruning shears? You don't even get any sweet blackberries. They're, raspberries even. It'd be nice if you got some fruit other than the fruit putiguo. You get bodhi fruit. All right. So keeping the metaphor going. Now, let's take a look here at one more of those. Oh, I can't do that until I get my chart up. I want to show you another chart, which is, let's see, 2:30. Okay, we're doing pretty good on the time here. What I want to show you is this idea. It's here. There we go. Not that one, but this one. Okay, share my screen. Let me tell you first. When we use this approach to the Dharma, which is the essentials, the seed that put it in the ground, it will grow, and it will create a 21st century Buddha Dharma that people can approach, people can use, without thinking it's Chinese, it's Thai, it's Tibetan, and not mine. These are the essentials because they work on the human mind, this universal experience that we have. And when we use the Buddha's wisdom embedded in these precepts, what happens is our lives improve. The thing about these 6 guidelines is you can fight, be greedy, seek, be selfish, pursue personal advantage, and lie. What will be the result? Affliction. It's just like in the garden, not weeding. And you get thorns, you get star thistles, you get weeds that can grow, but they don't bear any flowers, no fruit, they don't help your life in your garden. So the result of letting the 6 guidelines go is fannao. The result of catching those thoughts is meyo fannao, is a mind without affliction. Further, if you're holding the precepts, then you made a commitment, and holding the precepts is effortless because you've weeded out the seeds that can lead to broken precepts. What a help to the commitment that you make. And here's something that I hear from a lot of people. I spend time in interfaith circles, and a lot of the friends that I meet from, I'm going to sneeze again, sorry, here we go. A lot of the friends that I meet in interfaith circles say, I want to be a good person, but the problems of the world, I just never quite know whether I should make a stand or make a statement. What I find is a lot of hypocrisy, a lot of hypocrites. They understand the teachings of Jesus, but when they live their lives, they go and do it wrong. What should I do? I'm confused. I find a lot of people say that, not just Christians. But it's easy in a world that is so complicated, where the media is full of disinformation and misinformation, deliberate attempts to mislead you, out-and-out lies designed to deliver political advantage. What do? How do you find your way? How do you apply your own spiritual commitment to your daily life? Are you ready? I'm glad you asked that question. Take a look. Precepts on the mind ground. What have we got? 3 columns, 5 precepts, 6 guidelines, and then social issues that if my religion is working for me, it will provide clarity, and I'll know where I stand. And in my family, in my community, in my workplace, in my team, in my orchestra, among friends, online, I will be able to say, here's what I believe, and people will say, I agree. Okay, what is it? Look in the middle. Take the middle. 6 guidelines. No thoughts of fighting, go to your left, can prevent killing. See that little arrowhead here? So no thoughts of fighting can prevent acts of killing. That's the way it works. On the mind ground, you saw that fighting thought, competitive, aggressive, get there first, win. You say, no, I yield instead. You won't go out and kill. Furthermore, look to the right. That thought of no fighting clarifies for you all kinds of issues that arise in the world around you that value life, violence, domestic violence, warfare, abortion, capital punishment, euthanasia. You can say, yeah, I hold the Buddha's precepts, so I cherish life. All right? Now, mind you, those are hot button issues, and it's not so simple, but you have a clear place on things like crime. You understand where you stand personally. That gives you something to do, some place to stand. Okay, middle here, no thoughts of greed. Greed rises, it can prevent acts of stealing. When you say, because I hold Buddhist precepts, I don't allow thoughts of greed in my mind, I don't steal. Well, look, when the issue comes up, material resources, possessions, issues of economics, the distribution of wealth, the stewardship of the environment, who owns the oil? Whose oil is that? Who says that the oil belongs to BP? Who says the oil belongs to Shell? They just got there first and had the bigger guns and weapons, right? That belongs to the earth. Imagine if instead of draining the life blood of the earth, which is oil, and then burning it and sending all the pollutants into the atmosphere, if instead we said, no, that's not ours. We are going to find alternatives to fossil fuels. We could live on the planet so much longer. So, thoughts of greed is the cause of stealing, thoughts of greed prevented through generosity, and you understand where you stand regarding material well-being. Okay, thoughts of seeking arise in the mind. You say, nope, I'm content instead. I have exactly what I need. I don't need more. I don't need new or different. In fact, I need to go deeper into what I already have and share it with others. Sexual misconduct precept holds itself effortlessly. Furthermore, all kinds of relationship issues are yours. Because why? You understand where you are in that regarding sexuality, gender issues, your own vows, family bonds, gender identity in the media and in the family. because you're not seeking. You're not out to be different and new just because of an itch in your desire mind, right? So how powerful is that? Your religion is working for you. Your spirituality is at work in the marketplace. Further, thoughts of selfishness can prevent acts of lying. So, you know what happens? This is really true. If you take a stand and say, 不打妄语, I'm going to be truthful. I'm going to try my very best to not lie. What happens is, when around you, you hear other people lie, it just rings like a bell. No thoughts of selfishness on your part, selflessness instead. When you hear communication and anything to do with integrity, it's transparent to you. Leaders in public and private sectors, you can understand when they are stretching the truth or out and out lying. Role models for youth, clarity in advertising. I am impatient with advertising that promises me things that I know came from the marketing department. That's just not true. The software that's supposed to be the last one you'll ever need, you know in 18 months there's going to be an upgrade. And they're just doing it to stay in business. You don't need it, right? And when you promise yourself not to lie, not to be selfish, it's as if this veil, this curtain is lifted, and when other people are stretching the truth or exaggerating or out and out lying, you hear it. So how powerful, simply from using these 6 guidelines on the mind ground, being a good gardener. No thoughts of personal advantage prevents abuse of intoxicants. And if I myself say, I don't need to get high, I'm no longer getting high, I'm going deeper into my state and the world around me. I'm turning my senses around. I don't need to confuse my senses with alcohol in my bloodstream. I want my bloodstream to be tuned in to the world around me. What happens is you are clear on addiction. You're clear on alcoholism and the fallout in the family of having an alcoholic parent or sibling. Modeling reality-based exploration of consciousness versus distortion-based consciousness. You understand how Prince Siddhartha turned his body and mind into the laboratory for experimenting with all the different yogas in the forest and came up with the mind ground and precepts, samadhi, and wisdom. Finally, no thoughts of lying or its own reward. So, how about that? Isn't that interesting? By my interfaith friends who say, oh, it's just, I never quite know. I see so much hypocrisy in my faith. People who say one thing and then behave in another way. We know that Islam is the religion of peace. That's what it means. And yet there are extremist elements who don't live that way, right? Who can lead a Christ-like life? And yet when it comes time to get rich by fudging, by taking more for yourself, people forget their religious commitment. So are you confused about your heart and the world around you? Watch your thoughts rise. I watch my thoughts. Fighting, greed, seeking, selfishness, self-benefit, dishonesty. Replace them with generosity, with yielding, with no fighting, right? Replace greed with generosity. Replace seeking with contentment. Replace selfishness with selflessness. Replace self-benefit with service and stewardship. And replace thoughts of lying with courage to tell the truth, right? And what happens? Oh my goodness. Suddenly, when the world throws issues my way, it's like, because I watch my mind and I'm a good gardener on the mind ground, as a result, I know where I stand on that issue. And simply by calmly refusing to go along, people around you say, I'm so glad that you took a stand. Thank you. I've got a perfect example. We have a bhikshuni in our community who took the Shramanarika precepts, the 10 precepts of a novice nun, and then she took the bhikshuni precepts and the bodhisattva precepts. And of course, they contain multiple ways of following those precepts. And included in them are what are called the 10 goods and the 10 evil deeds. And they say that in terms of evil deeds, the mouth, speech, can create 4 evil deeds, and it can also, by avoiding those, can create 4 good deeds. The body has 3, the mind has 3, but the mouth has 4. So among them is one that's called 不两舌, right? No double tongue, it's called. No forked tongue. What is that? It's the precept that has to do with backbiting, gossip. In Chinese, it's called 是是非非, rights and wrongs. Simply not letting your mouth discuss such things, right? It also is schism making, breaking up people who are formerly together, but for some reason, because of your words, you can split up. Schism making in groups for whatever advantage you feel you're going to get. That's an evil deed of the mouth. So, okay, when we always say, okay, 不打妄语, 不恶口, 不两舌, 不绮语, we just list the 4 and we go right by them. Yeah, what else? You know? But there was this one bhikshuni who said, here is a place that I'm going to create good. I'm going to do good by following that second evil deed of the mouth and avoiding it, which is what? She made a vow never to gossip. She just picked that one of the 10 evil deeds, among others, but she emphasized that one. And it was so dramatic to watch her apply that because, you know, everybody around the water cooler at the office or maybe around the sink washing dishes after lunch, right? What do? You start talking. Oh, did you hear about so-and-so? Oh, no kidding. Yeah. Oh, I can't believe it. Yeah, no, really? No way. Oh, we got a call from Hong Kong. You know what they're doing in Hong Kong? No way. You know, it's just so easy. And around the circle, people would start 是是非非 gossiping, and it would come to her and she would go, she would refuse to pass it on. And everybody would go, oh, we were doing it again, weren't we? Oh, okay. That sure is easy to gossip, isn't it? She refused to gossip. She put her foot down and said, nope, when my ears hear people talking about others behind their back, or for the good too. There is a sure as well as a fei. There's a right and a wrong. I'm just not going to do it. She refused to participate, and she took a stand on her commitment to the 10 goods and 10 evils. Huge result was she changed every group she was in simply by refusing to gossip. So there you go. On the mind ground, this, you all understand, I've used that word a lot today, right? 心地法门. She was tuned in to the habit, the careless habit of talking about others carelessly. And when that rose up, she would go, I'm simply going to refuse to participate in gossip. And the people around her, you only do that 3 or 4 times, and they stop their gossiping. It's just amazing how that works. So there's an example of, if we can take those 6 guidelines that Master Hua gave us and apply them, the precepts hold themselves without it being Buddhist, right? It's not owned by the Buddha. It's my mind. I voluntarily use the Buddha's wisdom, but this is Ren Jiao, the teaching of people. This is 智慧教, the teaching of wisdom. This is 众生教, the teaching of living beings. 最深的心理学, 心教, teaching of the mind. When we can do that, oh my goodness, suddenly our Buddhism, by another name, becomes available to everyone. And by my example, by Heng Sure, teaching by embodying it, right? I don't even have to explain it, but simply by holding these practices myself, people around me notice, and they want to know what's different about you. Why are I'm impressed, right? And that is truly the work of Du Zhongsheng. What do they say? Hong Fa Li Sheng. I'm going to Hong Fa. How do you Hong Fa? Well, you go ahead and how do you teach the Dharma? Try it on. Make a commitment, and suddenly there's this clarity that you have for issues in the world around you, and people are grateful. They say, boy, there's so much confusion out there. We're drowning in media data input. I just kind of don't know where to start. Well, here's a place to start. If we can do that, like that gardener on the Pacific Coast Highway, our life will bear delicious, sweet berries, so to speak, which then we can turn into jam and can and then pull it out in December and share it with our family and our community. All right, the time has come. We're pretty much done. And I want to thank Professor Vu, and I want to thank Dr. Ye for starting our program, starting this forum. And this is under the auspices of Dharma Rum Buddhist University. This is a place to go if you want to learn more about Master Hsuan Hua's teaching and you want to truly investigate on your own how to bring the Buddhist teachings to life in the 21st century. So, this is the Sunday night lecture at City of 10,000 Buddhas, and do take a look at the eclipse, the lunar eclipse coming up. We get it down here in the southern hemisphere. Last time it was visible in the northern hemisphere. Maybe in California you can't see it. So I'm going to invite everybody now to let's see here. We didn't have any questions. So there's Ray. Ray, do you want to say anything to close our meeting?
Yeah, I'd like to, since today, since everybody just so wowed by your comment and the teaching, so there's no question. only thank you.
Either that or
but I like to,
they might all be asleep. That's the other option.
No, that's not true. You look all the quote from everybody to you. People are really deeply touched by your teaching. I just have a comment, if you mind, for a few minutes. In your talk about the translation as cultivation, and you talk about the basic fact of translation is to carry the meaning across from one language to another. Now, in this particular case, when we are facing tough problem in the world, whether it's climate change, food security, flood, and all of this, whatever, to me, to solve the problem, not only we need to carry the meaning across, but we have to blend into the particular disciplines. All right, it's like the Prajna psychoanalysis, right? That not only you have to, now you have the psychoanalysts have the tools developed, but there's something lacking. And what lacking was the wisdom and compassion. That when you blend the two together, it makes it so much more effective. And similarly with Professor Claire Brown's Buddhist economics, right? When you think about the wealth of nation measured in GDP, guess what? the rich become richer and the poor become poor.
Mm.
But when you blend into that, we're all connected. And in that sense, when you talk about all those precepts and so forth, is really make us to become not selfish. So instead of thinking about the GDP, let's think about the well-being of the people. And economic policy instantly changes. And so I think what you have taught is so much more meaningful when we're thinking in those terms. But we still need all the tools developed by science, social science and engineering in order to tackle the top problem of today. But what you have talked about provides a foundation. When we tackle the problem, what is our responsibility? Are we responsible just to ourselves, or are we responsible for the whole world, for our generations beyond? And that's the key of meshing of those disciplines with Buddhism. And I think the era of applied Buddhism is here. All right, DRV, we don't have apply. We have theory, but we don't have the application. I think that's probably what your talk today provide probably a cue for that consideration.
Great. Yeah, lovely. Okay, I'm on the same wavelength. I appreciate your comment. Yeah. So, let me ask you, Ray, as you and Dr. John Vu, what next? We've come to the end of our month of forum. Do you have something on the stove cooking for us for people who want to move deeper into these questions?
Well, we haven't initially when we talked to Dharma Jing Yong, we talk about this series is a beginning, and perhaps because the Buddha's wisdom applied to every field is almost endless. So we've been talking about after this, perhaps on a monthly basis, we focus on particular field, whether it be climate change or food security or whatever. But we haven't confirmed that with Dharma Jing Yong, and
Jin Yong Sure is sitting here beside me, so we could so we will talk about it. This is I think we should keep this cooking on the stove. This is a really good idea. This is a Sunday night in California. It's a Monday noon here in Australia. That Sunday night spot is a really good one to combine with Avatamsaka Sutra, with bringing those principles out to apply to the issues that we've been looking at. So maybe what I'll say then to everybody who's listening, there's 180 of us now, to say stay tuned and look for more announcements about programs like our forum. And if you enjoyed this lens of putting the Buddha's principles of wisdom to work to solve the problems of the 21st century people, then you can expect that we'll have more of this conversation moving forward.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Do we want to, Jin Yong Sure, should we do a transference, a dedication?
Make an announcement for
We can. Should we? How about if I do a dedication of merit, a transference? This is not this is more a secular forum than it is a spiritual one. Still, I think we can we can flex our giving muscles, our generosity muscles, by dedicating merit. And I'm going to share my screen again. Hold on. And I'm going to ask everybody to, here we go, share my screen. There it is. This is the Medicine Buddha mantra that we get from Yao Shifo, Medicine Buddha, and it's a Sanskrit version. If you want to know what is this is the number 6 of the 10 small mantras, Shi Xiao Zhou, that we do every morning for Zao Ke. This is number 6. Yao Shi Guanding Zhenyan. It's Medicine Buddha's mantra for anointing the crown of the head. We'll do it one time, and I want people to please, if you would like to, take all of the happiness that comes, they call it fashi, the bliss of the Dharma, the joy of the Dharma that comes from joining with wholesome friends, online even, but around the world. We are truly a global community today. And with a single thought, share that happiness. Send it out. Use your mind like a cell phone tower, like a lighthouse, and send it out with a wish. What would you like to, how would you like to improve the world? Send it out with that kind of a wish. And then there's no place in space where our minds don't touch each other. So use that connection, that interdependence, and share the goodness. Okay, so let's do that. Here we go. Om Namo Bhagavate Vaisajya Guru Vaidurya Prabha Rajaya Tagataya Arahate Samyak Sambuddhaya Tadyata Om Vaisaje Vaisaje Vaisajya Samudgate Svaha Om. All right, there we go. So, thank you again, everyone, for joining in, and stay tuned. We will look forward to having you back with our next forum and conversation on applying the Buddha's wisdom to problems, to solving the problems of the world. Thanks for joining, everyone. Appreciate the translators and the friends who used their efforts to get this lecture online, the translators who made it available in Chinese and in Vietnamese. 好，阿弥陀佛，大家。
阿弥陀佛。
Heng Sure, did you want to say something? Oh, hold on. Now that I've said that, Heng Sure, go ahead.
So first I'd like to thank Reverend Heng Sure for this wonderful talk, and also Professor Wu and Dr. Ye's organization of this forum. And since this is the end of this forum, next Sunday we have Dharma Master Heng Sure come back again to speak. Let me see. Let me share the screen. So Dharma Master Heng Sure will come back next Sunday and talk about faith. And the title is Faith, the Gateway to the Deep meaning of the Buddha Dharma. And so this will be same time, 7:30 on Sunday evening, and in California. We have same Zoom link, and the YouTube link we'll provide it later. So again, this is the end of the forum, and we thank everyone's participation. Amitabha.
I want to also thank Dharma Master Heng Sure for designing the beautiful brochures, and her team, and Mrs. Suzanne for publicity team. Thank you very much.